Johnny Dawkins is setting the wrong kind of records with UCF basketball right now.
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike Gian. Thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. Joining me, as he does every single week, is my good friend Andrew Gluco from The Last Word on Sports. Andrew, you've been covering UCF for a really, really long time. You're a UCF alum. You are Captain UCF in my book. I'll give you a shield and a cape and a UCF sword. But look, the Knights on the basketball court are struggling. As a matter of fact, they are currently on a 7-game losing streak. That has not happened since before Johnny Dawkins was hired as coach. So this is not a good place. As a matter of fact, since he's been coach, they have not had more than a 5-game losing streak. And it's difficult because he's been coach for so many years, yet they seem to be trending the wrong direction. Now, some things have changed for UCF. Obviously, they're in the Big 12 now, so the level of competition may be a little higher week in, week out. But if you're Johnny Dawkins, does this losing streak spell doom for you? I mean, you play your there's a loss to Utah kill UCF here if you're on an 8-game losing streak. These are not the kind of records you want to set.
It's not, but I think it's all about where you end. You know, can you salvage? Can you get to a postseason tournament? That's the big one. If you can get a postseason tournament, I think you can stave off, elimination from your job. This is not like the days of old when UCF was in the Atlantic Sun or the TAC at the time, when Kirk Spearaw went 8-23 and kept a job. If UCF's in a much different place. Now, losing record can lead to, is not going to be tolerated. Look at the streak the UCF had in football. They went from a bowl game every year from 2016, which was Scott Frost's first year, until last year where they finally missed the mark. And they've gotten close, but that missing the mark is what really spelled doom for the Malzahn era. This is no different. UCF had a losing record when COVID ended the season. They were 11-12. And you got to put an asterisk next to that. Season wasn't done. You can't really finalize that. It was just, it was a shortened season. It was kind of messed up. A lot of cancellations. I remember I was supposed to cover a game and right as I'm about to head out the door, oh yeah, game's been canceled. It's messed up. The season before they were just over 500, tournament canceled. So those 2 seasons, you kind of wash away a little bit because things were just so messed up at the time. But UCF has a history of giving basketball coaches a lot of leeway. Donnie Jones had 3 straight losing seasons before he was fired, including that aforementioned losing streak in 2015, 2016. He had 3 seasons of 20 wins plus, never made the NCAA tournament. There are 20 wins, but it was in a really bad Conference USA. Right. You had Memphis and a pack of Skittles. That was pretty much it. And then you had losing, records once you got to the American Athletic Conference. Johnny Dawkins did well in the American. He had 20 plus wins twice and made the NIT a couple times in the NCAA tournament once. So he did okay. But now you're in the Big 12. Expectations are higher. UCF's resources are bigger, which means one, they in theory should be able to go and recruit better. We're starting to see that UCF's recruiting is improving. Second, their tolerance for failure is dwindling because now they will have a little bit more in their pocket to make these kind of changes because they're going to be bringing this, extra money in. They'll have a little more credit to work with to be able to make these, these coaching changes and then, pay it off over time. On a Conference USA or American Athletic Conference budget, you really couldn't do that. On a Big 12 one, you kind of can, especially when Johnny Dawkins' salary is not through the roof.
Yeah. Let me
go ahead.
Let me interject the point. Does the fact that he is not a Mohajir hire, like, does that help you move on if you're Terry Mohajir? Again, there's no sentimental tie here. There's no like psychological investment. Like, I hired this guy, and so I got to see him succeed. If you're Terry Mohajir, are you looking at this and just thinking, we can move on from him, or has Mohajir grown fond of Johnny Dawkins since he came to UCF?
Well, they extended his contract. They've already done that. So at this point, it's way too late to say, oh, it's not Mike.
Yeah, so they saw something that they liked in him, right? Yeah.
This was 2021, and Terry was hired, and we're going into the 2022 offseason. That's when you're really concerned about Johnny Dawkins not being a Terry Mohajir guy. He's been there way too long. At that point, it's like, okay, he may not have been your original hire, but he's one of your guys. You can't make an excuse at this point against that. He's one of your guys. You've extended his contract. You've given him more money. At this point, you own it. You have to own this. So Terry's going to have to take a hard look at this and be like, you know what? We're not trending the right direction. We need to make a change. Thing is, outside of the fans who expect a lot, they have, and I have to point at the 2017 football season as the reason why.
Yeah,
that kind of changed a lot because you had the football run of the 25-game winning streak that show that that team can make a super special run. Then you had to add on to that the tournament team in 2018, 2019 with BJ Taylor and Aubrey Dawkins and Taco Fall to show that they can do that. But now, because it's been done once, they're expecting it to be done every year. Now, there are fans that don't hold that high standard, but there are fans that do.
Right.
And it's a not realistic standard. I'll tell you that much. That expectation is not realistic. You are not going to go 12-0 every year. You're not going to go 11-1. You're not even going to go 10-2 every year. UCF basketball does not have the history, the clout, or the stature at this point to be able to make a tournament every single year. Even football, which has had that 25-game winning streak and success. The national talking heads put them squarely in a lower tier of like, yeah, they're a team that could make a run for the college football playoff like every 5 years or so, but we don't expect a whole lot of them. They're a middle of the road, power conference team at best. It takes time to build this stuff. It takes time to change the culture. It takes time to build this consistency. The fact they've only gone to the tournament once as an at-large is not any of that. So I guess it becomes a question of what's Terry Mohajir's expectations for basketball versus what the fan expectation is for basketball.
Yeah, can you raise the expectations as well too? Can the coach come in and raise the expectations that fans and the university has for the program? I think to some extent they did start to raise them. Yeah, but ultimately, years like this can be an aberration, and this is why I asked the question where you're stuck in limbo where you don't have a deep bench, but you're clearly very talented at the one. I think UCF is just as talented as most teams in the conference at the one, just nowhere to go after that. But look, can Dawkins bounce back? Does he have enough time, and how does he do that? We'll talk about that right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Andrew, when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no place to get it than on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Also, the NCAA tournament is coming. Conference tournaments are coming. Lots of opportunities for UCF fans to win big money. Andrew, if you had to bet right now, you had to put together a FanDuel ticket right now, who are you picking to win the Big 12?
Oh, man, even though Houston dropped one, I still got them as #1. They've been the hottest team, and Kansas is fading fast.
Yeah, they are. They are. But look, hey, whether you're betting on Houston or Kansas, or you want to pick UCF as an outlier to win the Big 12 tournament, visit our friends at FanDuel.com. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com and join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Can UCF bounce back? How do they do it? They've got a few games left. Their final schedule is Utah, Kansas State, TCU, OSU, and West Virginia headed into the Big 12 championship. On our last show, Andrew, we talked about how meaningless the tournament is, the Big 12 tournament is, in terms of UCF making the big dance unless they win it. The committee says you are what your regular season says you are, and right now your regular season says you've got multiple losing streaks and you can't win big games. So to make that kind of splash, they're really going to have to pull off something absolutely epic. Taking that out, would an NIT appearance maybe salvage something for Johnny Dawkins and UCF basketball? What would it take? What would you see as a positive at this point in the season?
Well, I mean, the baseline is you have to make the NIT. I think 4 out of 5 wins, win against the lower 4, West Virginia, you can absorb as a loss, but you got to win all the other games. You got to go 4-1 the rest of the way if you want to make the NIT at this point. You're on the fringe. The bracketology still has UCF in the NIT, but at the very bottom.
Wow.
There's the two main ones I look at are D ratings and the Barking Crow. The Barking Crow has UCF as one of the bottom teams in, and then you have UCF as one of the last 4 in on D ratings at the back end of the NIT. So I mean, you got to make the NIT at the bare minimum, and then you got to win the first game. At this point, because this losing streak got so bad, because it shows regression. I mean, one, you got to finish with if you could do 4-1, you'll finish with a winning record. So you at least have that on for you, because right now UCF is 13-13, at risk of a losing record, and outside of the year where you had COVID cancellations left and right, including games I was supposed to cover. Johnny Dawkins never had a losing season at UCF. He's gotten close. They barely finished above 500 last year, 17-16, made the NIT. So if they can win 4 of the next 5, they can make the NIT. Finish with a winning record no matter what the end solution, the ending in the tournament is. But I think they have to make it past the first round. I don't think a first round exit is gonna save them. They had a first round exit last year, and 2 years ago they had a second round exit. So I think they have to at least put something together, because we know what this team is capable of. We've seen the talent on them. They beat Texas A&M and Texas Tech. Obviously A&M beginning of the year, Texas Tech on the road at the beginning of the Big 12 play. So we know that, and they've taken Kansas to the wire and Houston to the wire. This team is capable of great things. So if they underachieve in the postseason, if they get in, I think that's it for Johnny Dawkins. If they can finally play to their potential and make maybe a bit of a run, I think it would stave off being fired for at least a year.
Now, the Big 12 smartly ends their basketball tournament on Saturday to give committees more time to factor in the results of the tournament into their tournament choices. But to kind of add on to what you said, the first round, Tuesday, March 11th, that's when your 9 through 14 seeds play. So if you're UCF, you can't go out on Tuesday. I don't think you can go out on Wednesday either. I think you got to make it to the quarterfinals at the very least, and try to make a splash and see what crazier things have happened in these conference tournaments. Sometimes, and I'm pointing back to the results that we've seen earlier in the season with UCF taking Houston and Kansas to the wire. Andrew, is that these teams that get the buys, they take a couple days off and they can come into these tournament games cold. Some of them may not have a lot to gain from the conference tournament. So there may be a little apathy, from some of the top seeds that you may run into, because they know we can't really improve our standing here. We want to be healthy and we want to be fresh going into the NCAA tournament. So if you're UCF, maybe you can take advantage of that if you could slip through the first 2 days.
Well, I mean, here's true. The truth, I don't think the conference tournament is going to really make a difference one way or the other if UCF makes a postseason tournament. I think it's going to be pretty much sealed before that. The thing is about, some of these teams taking, a couple days off and potentially being cold. Well, we say that teams on the bubble don't get in and out usually based on how they do in the postseason tournament.
Yeah, definitely.
A really bad postseason tournament could adversely affect, some of these top seeds. If Houston drops in their first game, you think they're going to end up with a number 1 seed? Maybe not. That could be what, because I mean, you get, if that line gets really thin with some of those teams towards the top. So I mean, they are playing for something still. Obviously, you want a conference championship. You want to make sure you are locked in to the best seed you possibly can get. Because if you're jockeying with another team and it's close, and the difference is how they do in the conference tournament versus how you do in the conference tournament, that could be the difference between, a 1 seed and a 2 seed, or a 2 seed and a 3 seed. And as we know, that matters when you start getting deeper into the tournament. Yeah, so I think they still got something to play for.
Top 4 teams in the Big 12 right now: Houston, Arizona, Iowa State, and Texas Tech. So when you look at that, obviously Houston is 14-1 in conference right now. Arizona 12-3 in conference. Iowa State 11-4 in conference, as is Texas Tech, also 11-4 in conference. So razor sharp margin there, I think, for 2 through 3. But there's a large drop off after that. BYU is 9-6, Andrew. So I think your top 4 are set. Texas Tech, Iowa State, Arizona, and Houston. Right now, in my mind, given, when you look at the totality of their schedule, I think Houston is a 1 seed right now. The SEC is looking at possibly 2 number 1 seeds. I think Auburn is going to be a lock for a 1 seed there. And then the question will be, is Alabama or Florida able to take another 1 seed spot? And after that, you've got a lot of really good teams vying for that number 2. I at some point during the season, I thought Iowa State was maybe 1 seed worthy. And Duke obviously will be lingering there as a team who probably has the weakest schedule of all the potential 1 seeds, but they're Duke. And they will live on name until the end of time. So it's going to be really, you're right. They are playing for something there in terms of separation. Again, right now, Auburn is in that number 1 overall seed spot, and they've said it's not particularly close right now. And if you're Auburn, you've got like 4 quad 1 games still left on your last 6, something crazy like that. Beyond that, it's what opportunities are there for you on your schedule to improve your standing. Well, again, the SEC, one of the things about the SEC this year, so many teams being highly rated at the end of the season, you're all playing each other. And so it's kind of artificially inflated, if that makes sense, or you're just beating up on each other, but you don't drop because it was another like top 10 team. I think there are 6 teams in the top 10 right now. And if you're, in the Big 12, maybe less opportunities down the stretch. So as you said, conference, I don't believe much in conference tournaments improving your NCAA tournament standing, but for the Big 12, that could be true this year. So I am definitely with you. But hey, lots of great basketball talk. We're going to talk a little football here after the break. Who's the best hire for Scott Frost? We've graded this staff. We're going to pick our best Scott Frost hires this offseason next on Locked On UCF. Talk to me, Andrew. Who's the best hire? Who is the guy that Scott Frost got this offseason that made you say, yes, I am excited for UCF football in 2025?
Well, there's 2 ways to think about it. There's the sentimental, which obviously Mackenzie Milton blows everyone out of the water. But as far as actual football, I go with Brandon Harris as the best hire.
Okay.
Brandon Harris, a cornerback from the University of Miami. Was a guy that UCF was interested in back in the late aughts when he, played at Miami, and then had a stint in the NFL, and then a little bit in the CFL before getting into coaching. But look at what he's done. He was a cornerback coach at FIU and FAU, but then he, was a co-defensive coordinator and an interim defensive coordinator while at FAU when they had to make a change. So, when they made coaching changes. So, I mean, he's been up there, handling co-defensive coordinator duties and stuff. So, I mean, he knows how that is played. He's at UCF as a defensive backs coach. So he's able to use that knowledge to know how the other defensive units have to work with the defensive backs. I think that gives him, gives UCF a little bit of a a bump on that. Now there are other coaches that have more experience that have done similar things, but I think by having a young and hungry guy like Brandon Harris, who's early 30s, he's or mid 30s, he's not that old. I think is different than an older coach who's been there, done that. That they bring in a different skill set and wisdom. But I think a young and hungry coach like that was the perfect hire. And then you pair him with Travis Fisher. Okay. Travis Fisher, a UCF product, is a senior defensive analyst for UCF this year, was a defensive backs coach for UCF under Scott Frost, was a defensive backs coach for Nebraska under Scott Frost, and has worked at other schools. Like in between, he worked for Syracuse. So I mean, I think this is also a really good hire. A guy who can help with the defensive backs. I mean, that's what he does. That's what he knows, and who has been a coach, but is put in a position now where he can use that knowledge, but in a different way. I think that was also a really good hire. I actually think as a whole, Scott Frost has done an amazing job hiring his analysts, the lower level guys. A lot of former UCF players, Jordan Johnson, Drico Johnson, a number of different guys who are from UCF, who have a vested interest in UCF being a successful program for personal reasons aside from professional reasons, but also know the man and the product. They know what they're getting into. They know what they need. And I think he's done a really good job of putting a lot of former players. Ryan Callahan, was a guy that under George O'Leary. I think he did a really excellent job there. I mean, we've talked about graded hires, and the assistants have been pretty solid. I think the analysts are really solid. The big question was always the coordinators. Yeah. But again, Brandon Harris is my number one coach hire, but I think pairing him with Travis Fisher just made that hire even better.
Yeah, you talk about those, analysts that he hired. Steve Cooper obviously worked under him at Nebraska as an analyst, moved on to Boise State, came back to Frost now at the second stint at UCF. I went back and forth between Alex Grinch and Mackenzie Milton, but I keep landing on Mackenzie Milton. The more I learn about this kid, the more I'm so excited to see him work with these quarterbacks. Obviously, Taven Jackson has joined this roster. What can he do? Quarterback is going to be so integral for UCF this coming season. To me, it was primarily what held them back. Consistent quarterback play. They bet the farm on KJ Jefferson. And when it didn't work out, it was, okay, plan B, okay, plan C, okay, plan D. And it just did not work. Like nothing worked long term. I thought we saw some interesting things from Dylan Risk down the stretch. I really like his moxie. I don't think that he's scared to be out there, but he was raw and he was young and he didn't get a lot of work with the first team. And he just got thrown into the fire versus BYU at the end of the game. Had a really good game versus Arizona in the space game, but it was tough goings for Dylan Risk, in what they were asking him to do. Mackenzie Milton gets a spring with these quarterbacks, and I want to see coming out how much improved does UCF passing game look under Dylan Risk as quarterback coach. You got to throw the ball in today's college football. You lose, obviously, RJ Harvey, and they're going to have to go to the air some to try to keep the ball moving, Andrew. So to me, it's Mackenzie Milton. I love this hire. I'm a big fan of former players turned coaches when it makes sense. And, in all the conversations I've had with people around Milton, they believe that he's a guy that is not only fits what Frost wants to do. You talked about that alignment. They know how Frost wants to have things done. He is an emerging mind in college football offensively, somebody who has a chance to come in and innovate and can still relate to players because he is not that removed from playing the game at this level in terms of the experience that players are having today. So I like Mackenzie Milton. Before we get out of here,
I want to tell you real quick, though, Mike, I want to tell you why I didn't pick Mackenzie Milton.
Okay.
It's because it's too easy of a pick. Here's true. I view it as kind of low-hanging fruit because it was a hire that was so easy for Scott Frost to make. It basically happened before it happened. It was almost the pieces were already moving before, things were already locked in place as far as Frost was going. So I thought it was such an easy hire to make that it doesn't make it the best hire. He may be the most talented guy, but it was just too easy of a hire. It was a gimme. But let's not take away from Milton's ability to coach, who he's learned from. The staff that he worked with at the University of Tennessee under Coach Josh Heupel was, a great group to learn with. He was able to do work similar to what Scott Frost did, where he came back to Tennessee to help finish off the season. He was already hired at UCF. He went back to Tennessee to finish off at the college football playoff. I'd like to see more of that, especially when the coaching silly season starts earlier and we still have the CFP to play. So I love to see that. You hire a guy, but he goes back and he finishes the job. Right. That shows the work ethic. We know that he understands the game. He actually started to kind of venture into coaching beforehand because he missed multiple seasons due to injury. So he got to kind of look at things from a different perspective, and that just kind of built on what he ended up going into. He took a little bit of time away from active football, and then when the opportunity arose, jumped in, and he hit the ceiling at Tennessee. He wasn't going to move up. That side of the coaching staff was already very much locked down. So the fact that Tennessee, Josh Heupel and Tennessee were very, very happy to see him move on and move up. Heupel and Frost had talked. Everything was on the up and up and good, and that also attributes that Josh Heupel is one of the classiest coaches you'll ever meet. That guy is a straight up great human being. But so is Mackenzie Milton. Mackenzie Milton, I've talked to him before, one-on-one and hear his story, the stuff that he doesn't really talk as much about dealing with the other side of his injury and coming back and what, brought him from the void back to prominence, shows his character. And I think he's going to be able to do some of that, bring some of that also to UCF football. So again, he's an excellent hire. The problem is he was such an easy hire. I wanted to look at someone that was not a gimme to come back to UCF and do something. That's why I went Brandon Harris. But I just wanted to kind of point that out.
Yeah, to me, the hire is about fit and potential, and I think it's the fit and the potential, the upside to Mackenzie Milton is what makes him the best hire to me. But look, ultimately, if they win games, I think that's all UCF fans are going to be focused on here in the coming season. So it'll be interesting to watch and see, what they're able to accomplish as a staff. Fans should have patience. They should have patience with this because this is a rebuild. In my opinion, this is a rebuild. Now, and in a rebuild, you got to give a coach a solid 3 to 4 years to do it. Let this staff stay in place, show them the support, keep Mackenzie Milton in the fold. Because here's what's going to happen: if he has a ton of success, people are going to come after him. You know how this works. And when you start winning at schools like UCF, they want to come poach your up and coming stars, and they flash all the things in front of us. They come to this program. That's a stepping stone job. Hopefully, the nostalgia and the tie and the connection can keep Mackenzie Milton in Orlando if he has success. Either way, we're going to be here talking about it. Andrew, before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
You can catch me on Twitter /X or Blue Sky at StatBoyDrew, and you can catch my writings on The Last Word on College Football, a part of The Last Word on Sports family.
That's it for another great edition of Locked On UCF. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of every day. For your second listen, go check out our friends at Locked On Big 12 with our guy, Drake Toll. Drake leads the conversation in conference realignment news and pulls no punches when it comes to talking about every team in the Big 12, including the UCF Knights. You can find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast, and you can find us here next time on Locked On UCF.